Welcome to the Maria Heller Show, the Internet's original podcast. Since the year 2000, always ahead of the curve, always on your side. A true warrior for truth and justice, Maria and her guests leave nothing out, and no one is off limits. There is only one truth, the rest is lies. Sit back, enjoy the education with a true daughter of Mother Earth. Sharp New York wit, spiritual knowing, and a very dry sense of humor, Maria will dissect the news and lies to make it all palatable. Education is power. Maria delivers rapid-fire truth like no one else can. Here she is, the mouth that roars, the legendary Meria Heller. Good morning, world. Maria here, alive and kicking. Welcome to the show. Today is The Bigger Picture, one of the more important shows that I do, to help everybody keep your feet on the ground and keep out of the craziness that's out there. With my excellent friend and co-host Michael Reccia, we're going to be talking from his latest book, although he has another one almost done, Many Voices, One Mission, which I love, and I know a lot of you love it because a lot of you already have it and are already reading it. So good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Maria. Great to be with you again.
It's always good to talk to you. I know you said yesterday to me in an email, it feels like it was just 2 days ago. And I was like, oh my God, it feels like 2 years ago to me.
It's been a packed year thus far.
Oh my God. Well, you know what? It's my spiritual shows that help me keep my sanity. So maybe that's why I miss them more than, waking up to the news every day.
Yes.
I find that it's become a little more difficult, and I'd like you to talk a little bit about it. It seems to become a little more difficult for people to start to connect or to connect to their higher selves or spirit. And I'm thinking that some of it is because of all the heaviness and the darkness around the field.
Yes, we've just been talking about the same conditions applying in connecting with Joseph in bringing through this next book. And it has made me a great deal more depleted each time I sit for a Joseph chapter for this book than it has for previous books. And I'm sure it's because the world has turned its back on spirituality to a greater degree. There is a heaviness around, and we have to punch through that heaviness. But we have to also remember that that connection to our higher self is always there within us. It's not as though we're looking for something outside of ourselves.
Right.
That connection is at our core. And as long as we can still this world, as long as we can shut it out for our meditation period, we can still get in touch with our higher self and receive intuition from our higher self. The problem that we have, the band of light sitting, is that we are trying to connect to other entities, to other people. And they have to punch through the heaviness of this vibration in order to make it work. Particularly in a trance situation, Joseph has to get through, has to connect with me, has to take me over, as it were, and has to maintain that level of energy whilst he completes an entire chapter. Mm-hmm. And it has become increasingly difficult to do that. There's no inferior quality to the chapters. If anything, he's upped his game yet again with this next book. But there is a greater degree of work involved by Joseph and by all the people in the soul group that help to maintain that bubble of energy. There's a greater amount of work needs to be done to maintain the connection.
Right. Well, I mean, I send energy to the field every night, and, I try to visualize it. But when I visualize the field, it just looks like, I don't know if you've ever seen all those pictures of all the space junk floating around the Earth.
Yes.
But that's kind of what I see. And it's just incredible to me. And then I was, you look at the Earth and what's happening between the fires, the floods, dams breaking, volcanoes blowing, lava flowing. And I remember in your book, you talked about Earth rebelling. And, at the same time, I can see Mother Earth, screaming at us in a million ways. But at the same time, there's a preponderance of crop circles appearing, more so than I remember in any given year.
Yes. Certainly the Earth is scratching an itch. And unfortunately, we're the itch.
Right.
And it's become more than an inch because we're polluting the earth. We're polluting the very vibrations of this planet, of the reality of this planet, with our thoughts. And it's a cumulative effect. Unless we start to put light into the world, then we are adding darkness and darkness and darkness and taking more out at the same time. We want more things materially. Everything that we've got around us, everything, comes out of the earth, including our physical bodies. And we take and we take and we take, and we only give back darkness because that's what we're thinking. That's what we're up to. That's the way that we react to each other. We've got to return to our spiritual roots and send light into the earth. We've got to repair the wounds that we've created. I think we've discussed in past shows that many people say, why have you let this happen, God? Or why is the earth reacting in this way? The earth isn't reacting. The earth is, that there's a reaction in the only way that the earth can react. The earth is wounded, and we've wounded it. And then we rub salt in the wounds.
Right.
We have to change our attitude towards the planet. We have to accept the planet as being part of the oneness that we are for a start. We see it as something different, something separate, something that we can use, something that we can exploit. No, it's a spirit. And without that spirit, we can't exist here. That's the writing on the wall. We can't exist here without that spirit allowing us to exist here. Right. And so we've got to treat it with respect, we've got to treat it with light, and we've got to acknowledge that it's a part of us.
Right. Well, Native Americans have always taught that the earth is our mother. I remember when I used to teach the medicine wheel, we used to sing this little chant, the earth is our mother and we must take care of her, and that she takes care of us. But, this week I had a news story that only 13% of the ocean is pristine anymore. And this morning someone sent me a story that no one seems to be covering out of Florida, where the manatees, the sharks, and the turtles are all floating up dead on the shore. And humans think that we can live without these creatures, without a clean ocean, without clean air. And it takes me back to in the 80s when I studied with Sun Bear. And in the 1980s, he said, humans are like fleas on a dog's back. And when the earth is ready, she's going to shake the fleas off.
Absolutely.
And when I look at what's going on the planet, I would say, well, it looks like the time is right. It looks like the great shaking has begun.
Yes, it does, if we're not careful, if we don't change. And as you said, each creature is dependent on every other creature. Each creature is an integral part of the whole, with an integral part to play. It's a balanced sphere, or it should be a balanced sphere, but we've unbalanced it. We've got to get back to acknowledging that all things are part of us. All things are due equal respect. The big thing at the moment, of course, is the problem with plastic. We're finding plastic getting into fish. Right. And then people are eating the fish. So the fish are mutating. The fish are dying horribly because they're full of pieces of plastic. And then people are eating the fish, so they're full of pieces of plastic. And you can see so many different ways through technology, through pollution, through disrespect for the earth, in which the end could come very, very quickly if we're not careful. We're still at the point of a wake-up call, but we have to wake up. And by waking up, I don't mean ascension. By waking up, I mean realizing the predicament we have placed ourselves in and working spiritually to get out of it. Unless we recognize our spiritual core, unless we recognize that the earth has a spiritual core, we are in fact doomed. Absolutely. If we change now, if we work to put light into each other, into the earth, if we respect the creatures of the earth and the earth itself, it's not too late. But we're heading down a very short and steep path that's leading us to complete cataclysm if we don't change.
Right. Well, I always say, humans are the only animal on Earth dumb enough to destroy their own web of life.
Yes, indeed.
I was watching a movie. I guess it's a brand new movie. I think it was on Netflix last night called Extinction. And it didn't have to do with the animals as much, but it did have to do with AI. And it was very interesting because at the end of the movie, I came away thinking the planet might be better off if robots were the only inhabitants on this planet. You know?
If they were caretakers, that'd be great.
Well, the way they presented them, they were, and you saw the improvement.
Right.
You see the improvement from them to humans. And I don't want to ruin the movie for people that are going to watch it, but it's one of those movies where, you know, it's certainly not an Academy Award winner, but it will leave you thinking at the end of the movie. And I think that too many people don't want to think anymore.
Oh, absolutely. We've handed it over to technology. We've handed the thinking over. And this, again, is a reflection of us not acknowledging our spiritual selves and our personal responsibility. We love to hand over responsibility for everything. I'm ill because of you. I'm poor because of you. Mm-hmm. I'm in this situation because of you. My relationship is disintegrated because of you. It's always because of you. It's never because of me. Right. We never look within and think, well, maybe I've got things askew. Maybe I should be listening to what I'm saying to myself via my spiritual core.
Right.
Maybe I'm here to learn things. Maybe I'm here to take personal responsibility. And it's the greatest gift we've got, personal responsibility.
Right.
We steer our own ship. But at the moment, we prefer anybody or anything else to do it for us, including increasingly technology, which is taking away, as you say, our ability to think. Technology in itself is not a bad thing. It's the way that we're using it. It's simply a tool. But we've given over responsibility and are giving over responsibility increasingly to that tool, which is very scary.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, you know, and here in America, we have a president who doesn't take responsibility for anything. So he's now the immoral compass of the country. And I see a lot of people repeating his hatred, his vitriol, his ignorance, and think it's okay now. It's like the gloves are off where they can just go wild in the streets. And just looking at this, it's like I never in a million years would have ever thought this country would be where it's at when I was a kid.
I mean, the message, of course, has got to be, if you hurt someone, you're hurting yourself. If you hate someone, you're hating yourself. You are hating your brother. You are hating your sister. That is spiritual reality. No matter what you might choose to believe, that is spiritual reality. Mm-hmm. You hurt me, you hurt yourself. You hurt someone else, you hurt yourself. How can you hate yourself? There is only one organism in the universe. One. You can call it source, you can call it God, you can call it creative energy. There is one source, and we are each a part of that source. Therefore, we are each a part of each other, and an equal part of each other. Part of the seas, part of the creatures, part of the skies, part of the earth, part of every race, part of every thought. We have to get back to that knowledge, and that knowledge is within us, but we choose to ignore it. That knowledge shouts at us when we meditate, shouts at us when we're quiet, when we become silent, when we search for the God within, the source within. But we ignore it, and we ignore it and cover it with noise, cover it with busyness, cover it with it doesn't matter. It does matter.
Right.
Acknowledge that everyone else is you, not just a part of you, is you. You're a facet of everyone else. Everyone else is a facet of you. We have to accept that. We have to understand it and embrace it. Then things change.
Right. Well, you know, in this particular book, and I'm sure your others, but in Many Voices, One Mission, you talk about the fact, which is, again, something Native Americans have taught for, you know, centuries, that everything is alive, everything has a consciousness, and everything comes literally from the earth, and the importance of blessing everything you have and doing it every day. And I think people are no longer grateful or even consider that. You know, I'll give you an example. After 14 years, the water heater in my house died, okay? But it died a slow death. It didn't flood. It didn't do anything. It just went peacefully into the night. And I thanked it for that. I thanked it for the 14 years. I thanked it for not flooding my house. And then I welcomed the new one in its stead. I'm sure most people would think that that's a crazy thing to do, but that's how I talk to my house. And I tell it, you know, what I expect. It's sort of the same way I do body talk. I tell my body what I expect. And I think that people have moved so far away from the sacred that it's understandable that they're all losing their minds.
My spiritual teacher many years ago moved into a house, and she was in that house for the rest of her life. And the house must have had some very bad vibrations in it or atmospheres in it at some stage. And she couldn't settle. And she found herself sitting in the center of the town on a bench wondering what to do next because this house was having such a negative effect on her. Mm-hmm. And then she gathered herself up, she went back into the house and she touched each wall. She put the palms of her hands on each wall and she said, "I'm sorry, I've got it wrong. I love you. I am so sorry. Thank you for allowing me to stay here." And she went through the entire house and did that. And the atmosphere in the entire house changed, and she was secure in that house for the rest of her life. And when you went into that house, it was like entering a higher vibration. You felt peace, you felt timelessness, you felt healing, and that was because of the arrangement and the love that she had for and with that house. Recently, of course, the boys that were trapped in the cave, if I remember rightly, were asked to ask the cave to forgive them for intruding. And that, to many people, was something that sounded like craziness. But to me, it made perfect sense.
Uh-huh. Absolutely.
I'm sorry, we shouldn't have been here. This is an area for divas. This is an area for other types of creativity. We apologize to you and we reset your vibration, which again makes perfect sense.
Absolutely.
So I understand completely with your water heater. We should do it with our cars. We should do it with our tables and chairs. We extend their lives and we live in harmony with them. And we also create a barrier between where we live and the outside, so that the outside can't get in as much.
Right.
It creates a sanctuary for us within which we can get our thoughts straight and talk to ourselves, our higher selves, our intuition, or those from the spirit realms who come to talk to us.
Absolutely. Well, listen, very few people come into my space. And when they do, they never want to leave. That's the other side of it.
Yes.
So, sometimes I have to say, time for you to get the hell out. But it really, people have to protect themselves. I'll give you an example. One of my doctors, actually, she's a chiropractor. She was talking to me this week about she's starting to feel exhausted in her office space. And I had to remind her that, people come in there for healing, so they're dumping all their negative energy and their pain. And I gave her some suggestions, how to use her Reiki, how to clear the space. And, sometimes we forget to do what we know we can do to clear bad energy out of a space.
Yes, indeed.
But for me, the first thing I do when I buy a house or move into a new place is I smudge it, I talk to it, and then I do the ultimate, Michael, to make it my own. Want to take a guess what that is?
I can't, Maria. What do you do?
I make a nice big pot of sauce.
Oh.
And I let the smell of that Italian sauce fill the whole house. It's kind of like instead of
any house here.
Right.
Yes, indeed.
So it just brings in the good spirits. But people forget even when they travel, the importance of introducing yourself to a space, asking permission to be there from the spirit keepers there. Letting them know what your intentions are so that you can actually have a good experience. But a lot of people forget to do that. And I found that...
To say that you're just passing through, to say that you don't mean any harm.
Exactly.
To ask permission, as you've said.
Right.
To have respect for all things, and to treat all things as being alive.
Exactly.
We make this separation, don't we, in our mind? There's a radiator here, it can't possibly be alive. It's a radiator. There is a picture on the wall, that can't be alive, it's a picture. But all these things are creations that we have brought into being. Our angelic selves have co-created. Mm-hmm. And there is no lack of life. Life flows through everything. It's a continuous field throughout the universe or universes. It's only in our heads that we make that separation. It's only in our heads that we make that distinction. I used to, in workshops, take in a variety of objects. I might have a tin of beans or a piece of barbed wire and a leaf and a picture of an animal and a picture of a human being and say, which of these things do you think God considers to be the most important? And they would say, well, it's the human being, or, it's the human being and the animal. No. This matter of importance and degree is something in our own minds.
Right.
God treats all things as equal because he flows equally, or she flows equally, or it flows equally through all things. There is no division. Therefore, we have to treat everything seemingly outside ourselves as important as ourselves, as being as important as ourselves. Everyone that we meet, every animal we come across, every tree that we pass by, every blade of grass that we step on, every cloud in the sky, they are equally important to God because God flows through everything. And if we understood that, then the world would change now.
Absolutely. I don't know if I ever told you about my trip to Tuscany. If I did, stop me so I don't repeat myself. But years ago, I was asked by this spiritual group to be one of the teachers. They probably had about 10 presenters on this trip to Tuscany. And we stayed in, I believe it was called Montecatini. And it was a gorgeous resort. Older hotel, was probably 200 years old. And the people in charge of this supposed spiritual retreat, they had lost control of their group for the entire time we were there. The people didn't show up on time for any of the lectures. They were making fun. We went down to breakfast, and you know what an Italian breakfast is, Michael. They had everything from melons to prosciutto, all this fabulous Italian food. And they were making fun of the food. They were literally the ugly Americans, making fun of the waiters' broken English. And when I got to do my presentation, I changed the whole energy of the space. And the woman who put the trip together came up to me and said, "What did you do? I haven't been able to control this crowd all week." And I said to her, "Because you didn't do anything sacred when you got here. You didn't have an opening prayer. You didn't introduce yourselves to the spirit keepers." I said, "Why would you expect any kind of cooperation from the energy here when you just came in here and everybody just ran amok?"
Yes, indeed.
And that's the importance. I mean, myself, as soon as my feet hit the ground, first of all, Tuscany was a dream come true. It was so gorgeous. But as soon as I got there, I did an offering, I did an introduction, and, I put my intentions out. And that's important. Even if you're going to take a swim in the ocean, it's important.
Yes.
So, the absence of the sacred, I mean, there have been so many books written about that it's already almost crazy to keep talking about it. But people have forgotten. A few weeks ago, I was driving in my town with one of my friends, and we came across a herd of elk like I've never seen before. There were at least 100 of them. And I took so many pictures, so much video. And I posted the video on YouTube, and somebody actually posted a nasty comment. So, I mean, if people can't appreciate beauty and sharing beauty, I don't know what their problem is. I just don't get it.
We have this destructive streak as well. You've touched on a very important point there. When did we get to the point where we have to like or dislike everything and express that like or dislike? Why can't we just let things be? There are some very innocent posts on YouTube, as the one that you put up, and you will find people like them, but also people find they have to go out of their way to dislike them.
Right. I was like, what the hell? And I wrote to the guy, I said, "I'm sorry you don't appreciate nature, but I do."
Yes.
But, when did we become this? I think that social media has created this. And it's like everybody thinks they're hiding behind their computers, so they're free to just be as disgusting and base as they want to be. We have leaders that just divide.
Which is disturbing.
I know. Well, and you see the violence now. I mean, there are even violence against, TV reporters now. I think it all started when everybody thought they had to be politically correct, which, of course, is impossible for me as an Italian and as a New Yorker. But, and it just seems so easy for people to have their emotions whipped up like that.
Yes, and to operate from that surface of the emotions rather than from the core of the spirit self.
Exactly.
The spirit self wouldn't dream of harming anyone by disliking what they'd put on Facebook or disliking what they'd put on YouTube. That would be abhorrent to the spirit. The spirit would say, that's fine, that the spirit might point out something that is harming other people.
Exactly.
But wouldn't dream of saying, I dislike this, and I dislike you, and I'm now going to shout at you, I'm going to swear at you, I want to cause harm to you.
I know.
You can see that we're operating from the surface only. You can see that we are puppets of the field of negativity that we put our thoughts into every day. More and more we are puppets of the field, which is exactly what the field wants. The field is set to negative, it wants to continue being set to negative, and we are feeding it. We have to feed it a different diet. Mm-hmm. And that different diet isn't on the surface. That different diet comes from within. And it's great food for the field. It's light for the field. It changes the field. It stops us looking at things with such anger, with such hatred, with such disdain, and changes us back to what we really are. But until that day, we're stuck. You know, I look at many people who say that we're going to ascend, that the earth is going to change. We can't ascend until we change.
Right.
Until we change our minds, we're stuck here. We can't elevate to any higher vibration until we can resonate at that higher vibration. And we can only resonate at that higher vibration by learning to care for each other, to love each other, and to love ourselves. There is no other way. Politics will never solve it. Wars will never solve it. Dictatorships will never solve it. The only way to change things is to go within, acknowledge that we are angelic beings, bring that light out, and love everyone else. Mm-hmm. Every master spirit since we trod the earth has said that, and we still ignore it. And time is running out.
Right. Well, you know, one of the things that you write about in the book, I don't know which one of the guides had said it, and I think it's something that a lot of people don't realize, you know, maybe because religion has clouded their thinking about where they're going next. But the truth of the matter is, while we're here, and you talk about it in the book, we're building the house we go to next in the spiritual realm.
Yes.
And, you know, I've often said, well, actually, I've always said, I'm doing everything I know how to do to wake people up so that I can leave here with clean hands. I don't want to be trapped, you know, in couch potato land with most other people, like you have in your book, Your Life After Death. That's a visual I never got past in that book, where everybody's couch potatoing in their beds and nobody's moving for, who knows, millennia. That's not me. But people don't realize that every action they do here counts for where they get to go later.
Yes, we have a core vibration, and that core vibration harmonizes with a similar vibration of reality. And when we act from our spiritual self, when we act spiritually, when we send out light, when we treat people with respect, when we understand that we're all one, when we respect the earth and the creatures on the earth, we raise our vibration. And that raised vibration harmonizes with a similar vibration. In other words, we elevate ourselves through the areas of spiritual reality that exist beyond this one. Mm-hmm. If we haven't raised it to any degree, then we find ourselves in somewhere that's very like this, because that's what we expect.
Right.
We expect there to be houses such as the houses we have here. We expect there to be streets, and we go to the public house, you know, and have a drink on a Saturday night, and we maintain that illusion until such time as we think, enough of this, there must be something more. But in order for there to be something more, we have to contemplate something more, and we have to work towards something more in raising our vibrations. It's not a judgment, it's just a mechanism. We can only go to the place that we vibrate in accordance with, to a similar vibration. So if our expectations are, I want another life here, that's what we ultimately get, because we choose it.
No.
If our expectations of heaven, in inverted commas, are that it must be very similar to the earth, that's the level we find ourselves at. And we might be happy for, in the illusion of time, hundreds of thousands of years. But we're not progressing. We're not becoming more. We're not functioning as the God within us wants us to function. We are supposed to always expand. We are supposed to always draw in more light, give out more light, get closer to the Godhead, create more, be more, move on to different vistas, wonderful places. But we decide that we are limiting our vibrations because this is what we want. We want somewhere like the Earth, and that's what we're creating next, which is very sad.
Very sad. Well, and I also remember reading in this book that you talk about Earth actually experiencing something like hardening of the arteries.
Yes, the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, in that we are the pollutant. We are solidifying the planet. We are solidifying one reality, our vision of reality. The Earth, at its core, at its inception, was a beautiful, crystal, wonderful sphere of experience. It was a sphere where angelic beings, the angelic beings that we really are, came to visit, to journey through, and to experience all that the Earth could uniquely give to our individual experience so that we could move on and be more creative, move on to other experiences. But what we've actually done is to layer the same experience in again and again and again. The rubbish of our thoughts, the mistakes of the past, we can't get rid of them because we're not treating them with light. We can't let go of them because we expect them. We expect more of the same. And we feed the field of negative energy with more negative energy. And so we're layering onto the Earth more and more rubbish. Not just material rubbish, but vibrational rubbish. The material rubbish that we see, the pollutants in our oceans, the nasty things we have on our land masses, are only a reflection of those darker vibrations that we are clogging the Earth with. And if you clog the Earth for long enough, what happens? It can't function. If it can't function, we can't function. And then we go into a kind of stasis.
Right.
And then the Earth has to be repaired by angelic forces to the point where it can sustain us again, and we repeat the journey. Hopefully this time not to make the same mistakes.
Right. Well, Michael, we need to take a short break. Stay with us, Michael, and I'll be right back. Hi, this is Maria Heller. If you're enjoying this show, please consider listening to the rest of it, along with hundreds of other hours of education, by a small subscription on my site. Get over to meria.net, meria.net. You are the only thing that supports this show. There's no corporate control, and there's plenty of education on site. So please consider either a subscription or a donation to keep the work going. There are too many alternative voices out there that are being silenced because of lack of support. So if you don't want MSM to be the only mind-controlling news out there, please consider supporting the people that support you and help us all save something for the future for our children. Thank you so much.